Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will dive into a very exciting topic, Learning Reimagined, Preparing Your Workforce for 2030 and Beyond. This session is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD Professional Development credits. Now let's meet today's speakers. First, we have Becky Wallace, Head of People at LearnUpon. We have Ashley MacNamara, Director, Learning Enablement and Inclusion at LearnUpon. And we have Matt Pittman, Principal Analyst at Brennan Hall Group. Now, before we dive into today's content, let me tell you about Brennan Hall Group and some incredible opportunities that could accelerate your career. Brennan Hall Group is a leading professional development firm that has been serving learning, talent, and HR executives worldwide for more than 30 years. We've advanced the growth and performance of millions of employees and leaders through our cloud-based platform, delivering evidence-based research, data, and certification programs that empower organizations to achieve excellence in every area of human capital management. Our impact spans more than 10 million employees and executives globally, supported by our comprehensive research library, strategic insights, and prestigious awards program. Below is a sample of the organizations we are proud to work with. And registration is open for our HCM Excellence Conference happening next year, February 9th through 12th. This is where the top minds in human capital management come together. We also have our upcoming Women in Leadership event on November 19th. For more information, please visit brennanhall.com and click under the Events tab. We also invite you, as always, to participate in our research studies. Links will be available after the webinar. And once the results are analyzed, all participants receive a piece of complimentary research and other exclusive benefits. All details and applications for everything I've mentioned will be available in a PDF you'll receive within 24 hours after this webinar. Now, a big thank you to today's webinar sponsor, LearnUpon. LearnUpon helps businesses across the globe deliver impactful online learning to employees, customers, and partners. By championing simple, learner-centric experiences and result-focused support, LearnUpon makes it easy for organizations to create and manage learning that drives performance, retention, and growth. Thank you again, LearnUpon. We're also excited to announce that at the end of today's webinar, one lucky attendee will win 50% off the HCM Excellence Conference. Stay tuned to see if you are the lucky winner. You must be present to win. Now, just a few quick things to note. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the questions panel on your control bar. We'll be answering them throughout the session. We're also recording today's webinar, and you'll receive an email within 24 hours with a link to the recording and a PDF of the slides. The chat box is open, so feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. Your input makes this more valuable for everyone. Now, I would like to pass things off to Matt.
Thanks, Ivy. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here, and I'm excited to be joined by Becky and Aisling from across the pond, as they say. And we are going to dive right into today's topics. Be sure to, as we go along, if you have questions, we will definitely try to hold some time at the end for Q&A. But you are welcome to pop questions and comments into the chat and or use that Q&A feature. You can see the topics that we're going to be jumping into today. And let's get to it because we have a lot to cover. And we're going to start things off with a poll because we're talking about retention and strategies for addressing retention. And we know that that's a big challenge. So I have a question for you. In the last 90 days, have you had a highly valuable team member leave your organization? Now, Becky, you and I talked about the fact that retention was kind of where I got my foot started in HR. And I would guess this would be a pretty overwhelming yes response.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is going to be a yes. And it hurts, right? Like losing really good people voluntarily hurts. Gone are the days definitely that people are staying in jobs for 40 years, right? Like that's no longer the situation. But at the same time, a huge amount of time and effort goes into recruiting. So you don't want people walking out the door for a reason that you can kind of avoid.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I think it's really important to try and mitigate as much as you can in this kind of situation. Oh,
and I am, yes, look at that. Look at how split we are. So some of you have and some of you haven't. Those of you who haven't, that's awesome. We're very happy for you. Hopefully you can teach us some things today. Now, the second part of that is, how did that affect the team when that team member left? And did it have a negative impact? That's what we're most interested in. So we're going to put up a second poll, a yes/no question. Did that person's departure have a negative impact in any way to the operation, work, morale, results of the team? I don't know about you, Aisling, but I know that anytime we lose somebody that's important to us on a voluntary basis, it becomes oh, wait, we've got who's doing, oh, wait, they had that. So I'll be interested to see how this comes out.
Yeah, definitely. Like we even see, if you at all levels in the organization, doesn't matter what kind of job they are, if they're a high performing employee, it's going to have a knock on effect. And it could be a very senior leader, and that could have huge impact on a negative side from your roadmap or your targets. But even you're talking about a more junior, maybe sales development rep or business development rep who has been kind of booking qualified meetings for account executives, and they've been consistently hitting their targets, and then they leave, and suddenly the pipeline for the account executive team kind of shrinks by quite a lot for a few months while you're getting that new person up and running. So it hits you at all angles, I think.
And overwhelmingly, that's the response. 86% said yes, it had a negative impact. So as we get into this, we also really want to know what is your biggest challenge that you're facing in your organization when it comes to retaining good people? So take a minute and drop that in the chat for us, and we're going to keep moving forward on this. But we're curious to hear what your big challenges are. We've got a lot of challenges we're going to talk about today, and I bet we're going to hit at least one of everyone that comes in. So while you guys are doing that, why is this so important? Why do we care about retention, and particularly development as it relates to retention? So earlier in the year, Brandon Hall Group conducted our State of Talent Management study, and we asked organizations to identify, do you really understand how important workforce development is in meeting your current and future needs of the organization? Exactly what Becky's been describing. And when we talk about workforce development in this context, we are talking about those things that grow our skills and our capabilities and improve the overall performance of the organization. And organizations overwhelmingly believe that we have a good or even great understanding of the importance of development. But in my experience, organizations like to say that we have a good grasp on those things, but then the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. Do we really put our money where our mouth is and make that work for us? And we're going to talk about that today. And what are some of those challenges that are coming up for organizations? Things like having defined skills and competencies for every role, not having those skills and competencies tied to individual development plans, not having those individual development plans tied to business results. And so while we may understand it, sometimes connecting the dots doesn't actually pan out. Aisling, is that what you guys are experiencing at Learn Upon as well? And I'm going to turn things over to you to take us forward.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. I was nodding along to all of the challenges there, and I'm sure that they will resonate with any learning folks on the call. I actually was excited. I hope they won't mind me calling them out, but I saw that two really good friends of Learn Upon are joining us, Cassidy and Alison. So I'm giving you a virtual hug through the screen if you're listening. And they're two amazing customers of ours. So I feel like now we're in a group of pals having a chat, which is lovely. So we are going to talk today, like Matt mentioned, just what are some of the challenges around designing effective development programs and how can they ultimately help drive retention for us in our companies. So we're going to start with a little bit of say what you see. I can't hear you through your computer screens if you are shouting it. I think I actually just skipped one there. There we go. Say what you see. So I'm just relying on some kind person to put this in the chat for us. So what do you see there? I actually can't see the chat now that I have control of your screen, Matt. So
You've got a ladder.
That's all right. We got a ladder from Tina.
Thank you. Okay, we've got the ladder, so that's amazing. And if we move to the next one, there we go. So say what you see. Hopefully someone will be kind enough to put this in the chat.
Scribble.
Scribble.
Okay, we're doing amazing. This is great. I'm glad that everyone can join us. So we use these two visuals at Learn Upon to think about career development. So on one side, we have our expectations of a linear journey, and on the other side, we have our reality, which is a lot messier. And I think when we look at reality, this slide is something that will probably resonate with most of us. Our career journeys are messy. We often have to pivot, especially in the last 5 years. We've lived through a pandemic, we've lived through mass redundancies. And people, it's never as linear and kind of neatly tied up as we maybe planned it to be. But that is the great thing about life, and it takes us on lots of exciting different journeys. One thing that is really interesting, and I suppose the paradox of this, is that despite that being the reality, our team members and our employees still expect us to have a formula around career development. They want to know what the next step is. They want to understand the skills and competencies that are required of them. And they want to understand, if I'm going to engage in a learning opportunity, I wanted to further my career within this company or beyond this company. So I think, that's really, really fair, but it can throw up then all of the challenges, Matt, that you had on your lovely slide earlier, which once you start to do this, you have to map out your skills, your competencies, and ultimately it's a lot of admin work for learning folks. So we're going to talk about that as well and just share some of the challenges that we've had. We're in an interesting journey and Learn Upon, and we really built a lot of the basics a couple of years ago. We built our competency framework, we've revamped our performance management system, and now we're trying to move into our next phase, which is really skills development at scale, and trying to figure out if I'm in a role in Learn Upon, what content should I be consuming? How do I get that through our LMS? What's our content provider? So they're all the kind of big questions that we're trying to answer at the moment. So hopefully we can share something that is interesting for people to learn. The other really important side of career development that works is understanding, why aren't employees engaging in career development opportunities? I'm sure for anyone who works in a learning role in our audience, one of the biggest blockers to effective development is getting employees to engage in the first place. And this can be a real struggle for us. So we often hear things like, I'm just too busy, it's not the right time, and this content isn't relevant for me. And what we found is that ultimately these things just mean that this learning isn't valuable to me. So people will always find time for things that are important to them and that they see valuable. And if learning is not on the agenda for our employees and it's not something they can find time for, there's probably a reason that they're not seeing the connection between doing the learning and progressing within the company. And Becky's going to talk around talent strategy and talent retention strategy and how connecting those dots is really important. But just one thing to call out, I think sometimes we focus a lot on the challenges on the L&D side and what we can do better as a team, but there's also a learner at the end of this experience that needs to be engaged. Otherwise it's just not going to work, right? So that's kind of interesting for us to look at. And the other thing that we looked at was some of our own data around what L&D leaders think of their own career development programs. And what was really interesting was ultimately a lot of these programs are at a basic or intermediate stage. And I know, Matt, this is one that we're actually going to check in with and see what everyone else thinks on the call of where their program is at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and launch that poll, Ivy. We'd like to hear from you. Where would you rate the maturity level of your organization's career development strategy? Is it basic? Is it intermediate or advanced? And it's funny, I got hired earlier in my career, specifically to address this issue. And I came into an organization that had mapped really robust vertical career ladders for all of their key functions. And I sat down in my first week and I was like, yeah, that's really not how it works though. And so then I had to begin the process of sort of helping the organization, first the leadership and then the employees, to actually understand, look, this might be your path, but it's probably not going to be your path. But here are all the available possibilities for you. And it's consistent. We have mostly basic and intermediate on the call. So that means you guys are in the right place. Right.
I think also HR and learning and development people, we're very humble. And I don't know that anyone, even ourselves, right? We spent a lot of time on this over the last few years, but I don't think we'd even put ourselves in the advanced category. So yeah, I can understand where the basic and intermediate answers are coming from.
Absolutely.
That is a super fair point. I think maybe just to wrap up this section before I bounce it back to you, Matt, I know we throw a lot of, we threw a bit of data there and we threw a lot of slides at everyone. So I think just to wrap it up, we know as HR and learning and development teams that we want to drive engagement and retention for employees through development opportunities. We know it's important to people. We know it's absolutely vital for our organizations to grow and scale. But the reality is that we're struggling to do this. We're struggling as L&D teams to figure it out. We're struggling as HR teams to connect the dots. Our programs are not maybe reaching the maturity that they could with a little bit more time and investment. And ultimately, we've employees just not engaging with development opportunities within the workforce because they just don't see it as a valuable use of time. So I think it'd be really interesting to get into these challenges and just figure out maybe some strategies around that. And I know, Matt, I think you are going to tee us up with another poll to help get the audience's perspective.
Well, I think we're gonna start with a data point, and we'll get to the poll a little bit farther down, which is this. A lot of times when we miss the mark and we can't get our team to engage with the learning, it comes back to a question of alignment. And again, back, organizationally, when we ask you, Brennan Hall Group asks the organization, how aligned is your talent strategy to your business strategy? You would hope that you would see the results on this screen where, 94% are highly aligned or aligned, and only 6% are kind of off base. But within, I think, the alignment component, there's a lot of room for what I would almost call micro misalignments, because the overall strategy might be aligned, but if I used to work with a strategy officer who would say, culture eats strategy every single time. So strategy is great, but it's really what happens on the ground that makes a difference. And so, Becky, you're going to tell us a little more about how you guys have addressed that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've heard this phrase a couple of times already, and we can stick it onto the next slide, Aisling. But in terms of our biggest challenge, it is connecting the dots, right? I think we definitely see that L&D and HR has we're getting more traction, I suppose, and we're becoming people who are getting a seat at the table now, right? So we're getting in there, and that's fantastic. But we need to make sure that we've connected all the dots so that our people, they really understand what they're working towards and why it's important. So connecting the dots is Aisling and my favorite phrase. So much of what we do in both our worlds is connecting the dots for people. And that's super important when it comes to learning programs. So we definitely need to make sure that learning programs are supporting the right skills development for the business and supporting meaningful career development for our people. Our L&D programs really should be tied to kind of connecting both the business goals and the overarching HR strategy. And that helps us make sure that learning initiatives are not only relevant, but they're going to be impactful as well. One thing that is kind of interesting on this slide here, the 88% of organizations who were polled in the LinkedIn Learning Workday Learning Report, 88% of orgs are concerned about employee retention. And that's really, really kind of concerning. But people do need to be engaged before they're ready to learn. So I think it's really important to kind of make that connection as well. So what to do when you're trying to build a retention strategy? Definitely incorporating it into the business objectives and goals, right? Starting there, making sure that you understand what the company is able to offer and what we're driving towards. And then kind of if you can help use the business goals to structure and guide that work, really provides a clear path for execution. And then tying it over to the overall HR strategy, as I said, as well. That alignment helps make sure that the learning strategy, the retention strategy is purpose driven and results orientated, right? That's something that's really important. There's no point in doing these things if you can't measure the success of them afterwards. And then in terms of the learning opportunities, career competency framework, skills development, we actually last year in Learn Upon, we called this out as a company OKR across the year, where we were focused on competency frameworks and skills skills development. And again, it's putting it front and center with the companies to show people that's really important. Not only is it important for us to hit our targets and those kind of things, but it's really important for us to develop our people as well. And then things like, you know, make sure that companies are you're looking at things like AI, right? There's no point in developing a career development strategy that's focused on people management skills when AI is such a massive gap and something that people are really focused on. So you really need to be kind of thinking about all of those things as well. And that kind of ties all into the overall talent retention strategy. So when we look at, this is kind of a version of what myself and Aisling look at when we're looking at our overall talent retention strategy. So we have it broken out into different buckets in terms of engagement and recognition. You know, recognition programs, feedback mechanisms are super, super important as well. Growth and development. So LinkedIn learning, training, coaching, professional development, all the things that fall in under the L&D bucket. And then career growth, so competency frameworks, any internal mobility, promotions processes, succession planning as well is huge. And compensation and benefits, making sure that you're doing your salary benchmarking, annual, you know, market analysis, compensation reviews, benefits reviews, things like that. And then the other side that people are really focused on is culture and inclusion, you know, making sure that you feel like you have a place that you belong and that you're included, that you feel included. We have a culture code at Learn Upon, which kind of drives that part of our strategy. And then as well, it's really important to do the fun stuff, you know, the team building, the company-wide events, the all hands, making sure, you know, you got everybody on the calls, department events and all that kind of stuff. So it's really kind of, these are the things that we look at when we're building out when we build out our talent retention strategy. So in terms of key takeaways, I think it's really important to align and make sure that your talent retention strategy is aligned with your business goals and resources. Map out a holistic talent retention strategy and also be realistic, right? Like you can be realistic in what you can offer and what you can't offer. And I think that communication we often shy away from because we know, okay, somebody's looking for this and we know that we can't really offer that, or that's not what's going to move the needle in terms of the business, but we don't have that communication with them. So I think that's really important as well. Just be open and honest about what that looks like for the business.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, Becky, that I want to actually re-emphasize that, because I think that transparency in this conversation with your employees makes a huge difference, because sometimes even if someone isn't able to see or get what they're really looking for, the fact that you've been upfront with them and said, hey, this is probably not realistic in the near future, but here are some alternatives, or here's what we do have, can make a really big difference, and people can choose to stay longer because they feel like they've been heard. And even if they can't get it, they have an understanding the organization isn't just ignoring what they've said or ignoring, you know, what the employees are asking for.
Yeah, like you can't have a company of people managers, right? So like that's not going to be the path for everybody. So you do need to be realistic about it.
Maybe just to add to that as well, I think this is where learning and development can sometimes feel a little bit siloed from a HR team. And, you know, you need to be like, the conversations that myself and Becky had when we built the competency framework was a lot of people interpret that as a path to promotion. And they kind of misinterpret that, okay, if I am really good at all the competencies at my level, that means I'm definitely ready for the next level and so on. And that's not the case, right? Like it's not realistic for how businesses work. And a lot of the time people only want to develop or engage with learning opportunities if it guarantees them an outcome. And unfortunately, we just can't do that. And I think that should be the underpinning of any development program, is training your managers to have that conversation, making sure that you've had that conversation with HR yourself and you have a good understanding of that, and that there's a bit of more like a holistic view, I guess, to development. Because otherwise to your point, Becky, like, you know, everyone wants to progress, they think, into this certain role, and it's just not realistic. Okay, I know we're going to jump into another challenge, and hopefully for any learning people on this call, or maybe even if you are working in HR, I know a big question for everyone is how are we going to do skills? What are we going to do about skills? What does that look like for us? And one of the biggest challenges when designing a development program or a series of development programs is understanding where skills fits in. And skills is really the currency of those programs, right? And everyone is talking about this, and it's quite a big topic at the moment. So we want to just break down a little bit how we're thinking about this and how we've addressed some of the challenges. And we know that for companies, executives are very concerned that employees don't have the right skills. I know I get a lot of requests either through Becky or through our C-suite team around, we're seeing the skills gap. How's your learning team going to help us address that? And how can we help people develop to meet the needs of our business? And we'll talk a little bit about it later with Becky, but just connecting the dots of skills that your company needs to scale and then skills that your employees need to develop, and making sure that, ideally they're the same thing or that they're at least connected is going to be really, really important for people. When it comes to skills, we've kind of taken this word micro skills and just ran with it. I don't know if that will resonate with anyone on the call, but when we initially went around developing our program at Learn Upon, one thing we really wanted to avoid was creating development plans that live in a folder, get looked at once, and then languish and eventually die off, which I'm sure we've all had those, right? Like, that is a very common, unfortunate experience, I would say. That, yeah, Matt, I'm like, Matt, you're nodding heavily.
Absolutely. Been there.
Been there. Yeah, I know. I once had a very intense, like 3-tab Excel development thing, and I was actually scared to go into it ever again. So, you want to make sure, like, we spent a lot of time building competency framework. We've done a lot of work around our LMS and content. So I didn't want to waste all that effort for them people to think, oh, this development program is not that great. So we actually did a lot of piloting, which is probably L&D's favorite thing to do, just to see how it's landing. And one thing that came up is that people really wanted to focus on something that was a lot more achievable than a big skill. And if we're to be realistic, right, like in a workplace setting, it's unlikely that you need to completely revamp your communication skills. You've been hired based on a job spec, you come with experience, you have a skill set, and potentially there's just a few key behaviors or changes that you might need to make to really progress in your career or your role at that company. So figuring out what that micro skill is, and then focusing on that. So one example I suppose we can share is, it's a bit overwhelming to say, you need to work on your communication skills. It's a lot clearer to say, actually, based on these meetings I've been in and based on some feedback, I think you could really improve your active listening skills and your assertive communication skills and expressing your ideas. And let's figure out how we can do that together. And that just automatically makes it a lot more actionable for people. And one thing that we found is it helps break out, how am I going to practice that skill in my job? What is maybe a small bit of formal training I can do? And what's the feedback I can maybe ask my manager for around this? So this has just been a really helpful way for us to think about it. We actually have like a whole table of micro skills that people can choose from, which has been really helpful and kind of like a fun experience. And I'll talk through that as well in a second. But the other thing with micro skills, or even just kind of, I suppose, skills development in general, is helping people choose the right skill. So when we were piloting this, maybe, I don't know, maybe I was a bit naive. I just thought everyone knew what they wanted to develop, and maybe that's because I'm a learning person. Maybe it definitely was naive, right? Like, I'm a learning person. There's always probably 10 things I'd like to learn. But actually, people really struggled with understanding where to start and what would be important to them. And AI is a really hot topic at the moment. And some people thought, I should just do AI because I should do it, right? Even though it had nothing got to do with their role. So this is just a way, like, these are steps that we've taken. Ideally, you might kind of put this into a system that you use. We use this in a document, but you can maybe codify this into one of your development programs to help people. So just guiding people to choose something that's relevant to their role and level, something that's realistic to achieve in 3 to 6 months. I feel like 3 to 6 months in a lot of organizations is like a lifetime, right? Like, things change very fast. Your focus shifts, your energy shifts. And we just found that like the 3 to 6 month mark really resonated with people. And it felt like they were progressing then throughout the year versus anything longer or shorter. Make sure that you use your competency framework. That's actually what we did. Sorry, we ran our competency framework through AI, and we got it to shoot out all the micro skills that were attached to it, so that people could say, okay, I can see the competency framework, I can see what level I'm at, and then I can really drill into like some micro skills around that competency, which is really helpful. Really important as well to think about manager feedback. Your manager or managers in general is the right person to shine a light on development areas. That's one of myself and Becky's other favorite phrases, is that that's the role that managers can play. And ideally, they're guiding the people on their team to the right skills development, and they're playing a really important role in that. And then the final thing, just focus on taking small steps, so that it's achievable. This honestly was just so important for our pilot and eventually how we designed our skills development program that we're building at the moment. In a way, it's going to sound paradoxical, but like the less learning, the better. Like really short bursts of learning. We actually just take videos out of LinkedIn Learning courses and just link that. So it's like, here's this 2-minute video on this specific skill, and that's all you need to do this month. So it just feels way more achievable than hours and hours of learning, because people tend to start that, stop, and then never go back to it. So we're trying to avoid that as well. So, sorry, that's like a very kind of brief run through, I suppose, of how we're thinking about it. Myself and Becky, when we're on webinars ourselves, we love when people share the realistic stuff they're doing. So I know that was quite detailed, but hopefully it might just be helpful if this is relevant for anyone at the moment. The other thing just to share as I wrap up this section around the skills challenge, we designed a skills finder exercise that either we ran as an L&D team with someone, or we empowered managers to run it with their team. But ultimately, if you're trying to help someone figure out what skill they should focus on, the 2 key questions are: how regularly do I need to use this skill? And how proficient am I in currently using this skill? And it's really interesting. You're getting people to basically put skills into buckets, and it really quickly helps them see, okay, even though I think I might want to develop this skill, I don't use it that often. I'm actually quite proficient in it, versus something I use every day and actually I probably could get a lot better at. The immediate thing that comes to mind for me is, something like Excel training, AI training, like a tool that you're using every day that you just know you probably could be better at, but you never give it the time. So that's been really interesting. So I think that's everything. Oh, we'll do the key takeaways on skills, Elizabeth. So I think that's everything around that before we jump into the next one. But guide your employees to focus on micro skills or something achievable, really make sure that they're relevant, and help them understand how they can assess their proficiency. So I know
I love that. I love that focus on micro skills, of really breaking it down to the smallest possible component, because we suffer in businesses today with this perpetual need to do more, and learning just doesn't work that way. Our brains cannot make change for more than one thing at a time. So I love that we've like the way that you guys break that down. I think that's amazing.
One piece of advice I got earlier this year, which really helped me, was if it feels overwhelming, you're trying to do too much, right? So that's the other, break it down into that micro skill, and that then feels achievable. So it's really, really important to do that.
Absolutely. And as we start to talk about managers now, because managers are the linchpin in any development effort, we want to hear from you one more time, audience. What role do managers play in employee career development in your organization? So you got a couple of options there. Maybe not at all, or it's a checkbox on the annual review. Managers have regular career focused conversations with team members, or managers are actively involved with IDP development, mentoring, and coaching for career growth. Now, I don't know about you guys. I look at that list and I think aspirational state as we move down, the
Definitely.
list.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, I hope it's not the first 2, but yeah, I think it does get more aspirational as you move down. I'd say we probably land somewhere in between the 3rd and the 4th one. Some managers, maybe they have less direct reports, maybe they have more time to focus on people management. They probably do fall into the kind of the 4th one there, but I think for most people, it's probably in and around the 3rd, right? If we're going to be realistic.
Yep. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what the data shows.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so 56% leaning towards regular career focused conversations with team members. But even that is a huge improvement over where things were really not that long ago in most
Yeah.
organizations. And we all started, some of us long before others on this call, with the not at all, or it's a checkbox. Okay, we did your review. You did great. What are you going to do next year? Awesome. Okay, get back to work. So it's nice that we've evolved beyond that place, but this is also really a cultural thing, which I think you're getting ready to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to set managers up for success in doing this kind of work. And it is a skill, right? It's really difficult to move from kind of doing the technical IC level work into this career coach mentality. So I think it's really important to make sure that you kind of give them the time to do this. We've definitely, the results here say that 15%, which is a tiny number really, say their manager helped them build a career plan in the last 6 months, and that's a decline of 5 percentage points from the previous year's Workday or LinkedIn Learning report. So that kind of really points to maybe widespread drains on manager resources and time, managers trying to do too much maybe, and kind of plug holes in various different places, and then naturally what happens is, the work needs to get done, the priorities still come in, and the people management side of things kind of falls off, because that's what people kind of can't feel like they can give up, and the roadmap still needs to happen and the targets still need to get hit. So it's I can understand why it happens, but I think we really need to empower managers to focus in on this and really help them understand the impact of spending the time doing this, creating really easy to follow resources and dedicated training as well, just to help them in that as well. And also recognition, right? It's really important for organizations to point out on to managers who are embracing this career building mentality, and having that mindset. It's super important. In terms of like the role of managers, really providing realistic guidance on the coaching and helping people to understand what's possible, help them connect the dots between what opportunities are available as well, creating LinkedIn or creating job learning opportunities, absolutely massive. We know we often use the 70-20-10 model when we're looking at this, and 70% of the training being on the job. That's when people learn the best. They can practice that skill over and over and over again, in real life scenarios. So that's massive. And I think managers often forget that that's part of the whole process. But it's such a huge part of doing that. And then, things like understanding the future opportunities, and also being honest when things don't go to plan, right? So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, somebody's working towards a career change, promotion, but the business needs change. Don't shy away from that communication. Be transparent, be open, be honest. You're much more likely to keep people and retain them and keep them engaged when you're honest with them, rather than saying, oh, I'll come back to you about that next week. I'll come back to you about that next week. That makes people just feel awful. So really important to be honest and transparent when things aren't going to plan. So one of the other things that we definitely saw when we were rolling out our micro skills pilot, was trying to find this common ground, right? Often people will say, I want to learn about AI, right? That's the buzzword for the last few years. That might have no relevance to their role. Or, it's really important to make sure that it's, you're finding the common ground between what they want to develop, what they need to develop, and then most importantly, what skills the business actually really needs. So it can be difficult to kind of find that balance. They're usually not the same thing. So it can be a bit tricky to kind of have the conversations to figure out what that actually looks like. And then in terms of empowering managers to create development plans, again, enabling managers with the tools and the knowledge to kind of lead that with their teams, giving team members autonomy with skills, so helping them to narrow down, choosing micro skills and completing templates and things like that. And then also, really important to encourage managers to use AI, use different tools to create personalized learning plans. You don't have to do this all yourself. There's so much out there. We use Gemini a lot, and it's really impactful, right? You can you can do so much so quickly, and then you can review it, right, instead of trying to start from nothing can be really, really difficult and again overwhelming. So really important to kind of lean into what tools are available at your disposal to create those learning plans. So in terms of key takeaways, I'd say train managers to become career coaches. It's not a natural skill for a lot of people. You really do have to work at that. Support people to connect the dots for their teams, and then optimize their time through AI and templates. So again, where managers don't have a huge amount of time on their hands, help them to kind of maximize what they can do with the time that they have available.
That's where working, yeah, and working smarter and not harder is key to taking this into the future, right? And we're gonna, Ashley, you want to introduce this next slide, and then we'll pop the poll question up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, I had a bit of a moment this week where I realized our future workforce will be able to get all of their development needs outside of the workplace, right? Like we're going to have people coming into our workforce in the coming years who are completely AI confident, who've already been using ChatGPT to manage their whole life, and they'll be able to create their own development plans. They'll be able to develop their own skills outside on their phone. And I think we're under pressure now for us to figure out how we can get ahead of that in terms of corporate learning and how we can deliver things that are personalized at scale and in a really smart way. And I love this phrase, and this just really resonated with me when I read it. I think it might have been last year, but the idea of the super worker, right, that Josh Bersin put out in his report, and this idea that AI should really dramatically improve how we work and how we can just work smarter and not harder, to use that phrase. And I know, Matt, you guys had your AI summit this year and had some really interesting takeaways from that.
Yeah, this was a big topic of conversation at our AI summit just a few weeks ago. And Ivy, let's go ahead and throw the poll up, because what we're really interested in is, how is your organization currently leveraging AI capabilities in workforce development? At the AI summit, we were talking about the fact that AI is here and it is affecting work, and it is affecting everybody's work, even if it's not directly relevant to my role today. It is still changing the way work is happening. And in fact, one of our speakers was talking about the fact that he, during an onboarding experience with junior brand new associates coming in out of university, sat down with them and actually said, congratulations, you're now all leaders because you have AI coworkers, and you need to learn how to work with your AI coworkers. And that's actually became the focus of what he talked about. That retention is a big deal, because as AI changes how work gets done, it's not always going to be about a one-for-one. AI can now do this job, so we no longer need this job. It's going to be more about, AI can do this part of this job, but can the people we have leverage the AI capability to take us forward? And as you might expect, we're a little bit all over the board. Some people are doing it, some people aren't. And that's true. That's 100% what we see in every conversation. Even at the summit, we had companies that were there who were all in, and we had companies that were just trying to help their leaders understand what ChatGPT actually is. So, AI is going to play a big part in this, Ashley, moving forward for learning and development, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, for anyone on the call that works directly in learning and development, if you're not already using AI to help you with your development programs, with your skills management, that's something that definitely should start as soon as possible. I don't think it is feasible to design skills development at scale without help. Just being able to put your job titles in and spit back out the skills that are related to those, so that you can get them back to leaders to review is automatically 10 times faster than if we had done it manually. And we've all done this the manual way over the years. So it's just nice to know that we can kind of superpower the work that we're doing. And two kind of key things that we're looking at in terms of technology is AI powered skills plans and learning journeys. So in terms of the skills plans, we kind of talked a little bit around it throughout the presentation, but just creating a prompt that a manager or someone in the company can easily put in that will generate a plan for them is just super important. It's easy. You can input exactly as Becky mentioned, the 70-20-10 model, or you can customize that, right? With 70-20-10, that works as a general rule. If you think about someone who's onboarding or moving into a new role, maybe through internal mobility, they're going to need a much higher level of formal training. So suddenly your formula will change, right? You might be doing 30 or 40% formal training, and you also need a lot of feedback, and you're not quite ready to do that on the job experience. So the AI will just allow you, I suppose, to kind of tweak that and really create that personalized plan. You can also input all the resources that you have across the company to help guide people to the right place. One of the big issues that we have is people not realizing all of the development resources that they actually have access to. So even just training the AI to spit that back out has been really, really powerful for managers to learn. And then the other piece for us is just smart learning journeys where you are going to be rooted through content that is relevant for your role and your level. And I think, in terms of like AI generated content, obviously that will be helpful to a point. One thing that we find really useful is blending content that we get maybe off like LinkedIn Learning or another content provider with our more context specific learning content. And that's really what employees want, right? They don't want too many generic content pieces. They want to understand how I can be successful at this company. So that's just kind of two examples of how we're trying to work a little bit smarter. I talked, like I said, around the kind of skills-based learning journeys. And one example that we wanted to share just really briefly is, we built, I suppose we've always had a version of a manager development program at LearnUpon. It evolves every year as we scale and as we grow. And originally we were getting all the new managers, new being either hired into the company or promoted into that role, bring them in, train them all together, let them back go again. And one of the pieces of feedback that we kept getting was, if I'm completely new to the manager role, I really need a different set of learning to someone who's coming in with, 10, 20 years of experience. Now, we all need the same cultural content for sure. Like we all need that base level, but then, really based on the role I'm taking within this company, if I'm a VP, if I'm a head of, if I'm a senior director, that's going to impact how I think about this learning. So one thing that we did this year was just build out different tracks within our LMS so that it routes the right leader to the right path. And we saw a lot more engagement with the program, and we were able to build some really nice hands-on assignments for them to practice with. So I know this seems really kind of simple and basic, but it's one of those things where we could have just left the program really sitting where it was. And if I think about our maturity question, we could have just left it kind of in the intermediate piece, but we really pushed ourselves and said, how can we really like level this up and make it a lot better. So just wanted to share that as kind of a wrap up to our conversation.
Yeah, and what I love about that learning journey. In fact, oops, please hold. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Zoom PowerPoint is okay. Whatever. We're not going to worry about it. What I love about it is, to your point, Aisling, is it is very simple. It looks complicated and it feels complicated when you take that and you duplicate it over 200 roles or 500 roles. And yeah, it definitely takes on a life of its own, but just like the micro skills, breaking that down to the most important behavior, the most important piece that I can change, matters. Doing that with the skills journey matters too. What does this journey look like for this population? And really don't try to keep yourself from getting lost in the forest for the trees. Awesome. So we are at the portion of the session where we want to get to your questions and other questions. And I actually have one I want to ask Becky and Aisling, but we had one come up in the chat from Tina when we flipped the switch into the skills and working smarter and not necessarily harder, which is what are people using to manage skills profiles, and how do you guys do that? How are you guys doing that at LearnUpon?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's always a tricky one of where should your skills information live. So We store the skills information in a couple of places, but to be completely transparent, we use our own LMS. We're an LMS company, so we get to be customer zero, which is really exciting. You know, learning in a learning company is an amazing place to be in. So we just released a skills feature within our own platform. So we're currently testing that out. And we're going to store all of our job titles within our LMS, and then we're going to map all of the skills to the job titles along with proficiency level. Now, what I would say is if we didn't have that functionality, that would have just been living in a spreadsheet for us. We're really lucky now that we can kind of have this option. I think with skills, the motivation sometimes or the easy, you want to make it complicated almost, or you think you need to buy a separate system. I would think about your HRIS, you know, stores a lot of your source of truth data. Perhaps there's a way you can keep it in there. Maybe you can keep it in your LMS. I would really try and figure out a current system that you're already using to deliver something and really use that. I don't know, Matt, you might you probably have other experiences, I don't know, to add to that.
Well, I mean, I am a big proponent, and we at Brandon Hall Group will always come back to what's your purpose? What is your reasoning, and what's driving you to build out your skills-based approach, and then let that determine your technology decisions. And so I think it's great advice to say, what do you already have that you could leverage for this purpose? Even if that's only to get it through the pilot stage, to say, yes, this approach will reap benefits for us. It will drive us to the results that we're looking for, but to scale it, we're going to need something more. We're going to need something more than what we already have, right? And there are any number of, you know, development talent platforms that have skills approaches and that are standalone things that you can bolt onto your ecosystem in any number of ways. You be clear about what you need and then find the right solution to meet that need.
Yeah, I would also say just start, right? Like you don't always
100%.
have to have the shiny, really expensive thing to get the result or to get a result that you're looking for. Like when we built out our competency framework, and we were kind of looking at where could we put it? Will we put it into our HRIS? Will we where will we put it? We eventually decided, you know what, it's perfectly usable and acceptable in a Google spreadsheet. And that's what's really accessible to people, right? That they can find it, they can search the content. It's really easy to use. So it doesn't always have to be, oh, I'm going to have to go and get more budget or, because that can be a tricky conversation as well,
Right. And that's exactly what we mean. Great advice. Just get started.
Just get
Be
started.
clear on your purpose. Make it so it works for people, because if it works for people, they will use it. And if they use it and it starts to gain that momentum, the more momentum you gain, the more you are building your own business case for the time when the time is right to say,
Definitely.
okay, it's time to pull this out of Google spreadsheets and make it something else. Right. I wanted to circle back to you, Becky, and also Ashley, and get your perspective on this. One of the things that I was thinking about when we were talking about the strategy building, and we had that slide where we were going through all the different stair steps, starting with the business strategy and then the HR goals and HR needs and the skills and competencies. At what point and how have you all engaged the employees to get their perspective on what they're hoping for, or looking for, or wanting from their career development opportunity? Because it's easy sometimes to think that we know, but I found it helpful in my past life to just actually sit down with employees and ask.
Yeah, I can jump in as Becky if you want. But actually, Matt, it's really interesting. When we did our pilot of how we were going to do development plans, we interviewed a lot of employees. We sat down with a lot of people. And it's really interesting because you almost have like a couple of buckets of how people want to engage with development. So we had people who were like, I'm actually fine. I just want to come to work and do my job. I actually don't want to engage with this. I like knowing that the resources are there, but I'm pretty good as is. Then we had our really kind of driven people who are super motivated, that are like, give me the entire plan, give me the competency framework, and kind of unleash me into the learning world. And then we had a couple of people in between who were like, I'm just really busy at the moment, but I would love to engage with this if the format was better or if this was tweaked. And that's where we got the most useful feedback, right? Was the people who wanted to do it, but there was some kind of blocker and we could design around it. So I really agree with that, Matt, that you need to go out and understand. Do not build any learning programs in isolation. Do not go too far without truly understanding your workforce. We're a busy scaling company. We have really big growth goals, and that impacts our ability to learn and how people want to engage with things. And that's really influenced us to design in a certain way. If you're in a different industry, different maturity level, whatever it might be, that's all going to play a part. So would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we pilot everything before we roll it out to the whole company. It makes it so much easier to move faster if you've kind of done that test with, and sometimes we do like 2 or 3 pilots to make sure that we're kind of learning as we go before we roll it out to the whole company. And doing a lot of focus groups across different departments, right? Because what works for one department might really not work for another department. So we're trying to kind of as learning people, we're always trying to help as many people as we possibly can. So definitely getting the feedback from the different teams. We also have, engagement surveys and things like that. We have a number of questions on our L&D strategy and how people are actually finding. We can put all these things out there, but what are people actually saying? Are they finding the value in them? Are we moving the needle from one year to the next in terms of what we're offering? And then the other thing that we've really noticed helps a lot is in kind of finding your champion. Finding that person that's like really into it, really engaged, and getting them to talk about it as well, right? Because when HR come along or L&D come along and they say, this is really good, you should do this. But it resonates so much more often if it's a coworker who isn't involved in the creation of that process to say, actually, I did this and it really helped me. And that I think, really, really, really helps.
Yeah, that's a huge, I thought about that too when we were talking about engaging and getting people. It's a gap that I see a lot with our clients where they don't tell the success stories. They don't talk about the value that's been realized already. What we tend to do is say, please take my course, please take my course, please take my course. But how about, to your point, Becky, actually, I took this course and this is what it did for me. And now I'm able to do X, Y, and Z better in my role.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. We could keep talking, but it's the end of the day for you guys. And, we want to wrap things up. Some just overall things to keep in mind. Delivering career development that works is a challenge. It's not easy work, but just start. Right? L&D can help connect the dots between business goals and HR, and empowering managers and employees through AI-powered skills plans can make a huge, huge difference. Any final thoughts, Ashley or Becky, as before we go to our raffle drawing?
No, I think for me it's just start, right? Just start somewhere and put something in place and build on it as you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you're probably doing better than you think, right? Going back to Becky's part about us all being harsh critics. So also reflect on those wins, share the success stories, and market your learning programs. There's lots of good stuff in there.
Yep. And if you're doing anything, you're doing better than many.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, Ivy, let's pull a raffle winner. Somebody come hang out with us in Florida in February.
Thank you, Matt. I'm thrilled to share that Maxine Zaidman has won 50% off the HCM Excellence Conference. Congratulations, Maxine. We'll be reaching out shortly with more details.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Becky and Aisling. It was a pleasure. Thank all of you for giving up an hour of your precious time to engage in this important conversation. And we wish you all the best in addressing your organization's retention challenges, in building out development strategies to do that. So have a great rest of your day, and be on the lookout for the email coming from Brandon Hall Group with all of the great materials from today.
And feel free to connect with us. Aisling and I love talking about this stuff. We will be happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn and bend the ear off you by talking about this stuff. So go for it if you're interested in learning more.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.